again. Somebody touched the audio, and I'm not too happy about it. Could have been me, but I don't think it was. Anyway, this is attempt number 2, and welcome back. Hanging out, and we're hanging out in Romans this week. Listen, I know that it's a little bit, kind of weird, whatever. It's not how people do it nowadays. That there's 2 separate channels. One, the podcast, whatever this is called. But I wanted to keep this separate from Storytime with Uncle Charlie because I did not want to subject you to my own expounding on the reading, right? The reading is super fair. It's super basic. It's just what is expected from the text. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no real cross-referencing that much. We're not getting into the Greek and the whatever else there is of anything. It's just really basic, really regular reading of everything, right? The entire book of the Bible, or the books, all of the books of the Bible, and it's just one chapter a day, no matter how long or how short the chapter is. We're just tackling the one and moving on. That's what it is. But over here, some things need a little bit more explanation, and so that's what we're trying to get into. Romans is one of those things, so we're diving into it this week. So follow both. Anyway, and that's why these typically come out at the end of the week, because then we'll get through all of our 5 chapters, and then you can kind of recap everything. So anyway, here we go. We're talking Romans. Now, there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out, right? So we read chapter 1, and he's kind of setting the stage, right? And then we get in chapter 2, and he's talking about their big hang up on the circumcision. We talk about chapter 3. It's more of like faith and how the law is in relation to the faith. And then in chapter 4, we're talking that justification comes from faith. And then in 5, what is the result of that and how does that look? So one of the things that I love about Romans is that it is super practical. You're going to run into Romans all the time. Anytime you talk about your belief as a Christian, that's the reason we're jumping into this, right? We started in the Gospels. We did John as the deity of Christ. We did Luke as his actual works and his life. And now we're getting into, because that's the bedrock. And then now we're getting into the fundamentals, right? The pillars upon which the pillars that are on the foundation, right? The pillars of our belief built on the foundation of Christ and his work on the cross, right? So that's how we're going through this. Didn't plan it out that way, but just deciding what book to do next, I was like, it's kind of how it's working. Let's go that direction. So anyway, you're going to run into this all the time, literally all the time. Anytime you have a conversation about faith, anytime you have a conversation about Christianity or the state of the world or our relationship to other religions, and most of it is in Romans. Your relationship to sin, faith, works, it's all here. This is like one of the best treatises on Christianity that there are. And so I'm going to try to give you some real world scenarios in which these arguments are being portrayed, because we're facing the same exact thing that Paul faced in Romans, in Rome, or the church faced in Rome, and that he was addressing. So, but you gotta read. I'm not reading the whole chapter, so you gotta go see, hanging out. I'm sorry, story time, and then come back and just stay up to date on that. But one of the things that I did want to jump out is Paul opens up Romans by saying that what is known or could be known about God is plainly evident. And I love that he states it in that way, that it is plainly evident. It is obvious. He makes the argument of, well, duh. Everybody knows that there is a God, but who is he? And can he be known apart from anything else? Can you look at the universe and just deduce absolute bedrock understanding of the universe that there is a God. And can you deduce anything about him? Is it an agnostic argument? There's a God, but we really can't know anything about him. Is that possible? And he says, no. You look at the universe, and you will not only deduce that there is a God, but you can know so much about him. And the fact that people choose to not know that stuff about him, here are the consequences of that choice. So we're going to do a quick excerpt. I'm going to expound on it. And obviously, it's pretty obvious where these kinds of arguments come up, but we're going to do it anyway. So I highlighted some stuff so I know where I'm picking up at. This is chapter 1, verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth of unrighteousness, because that which was known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. Wrath is being revealed from heaven on unrighteous men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. They know better. They know the truth. They know the universe didn't explode from some soup. They know that. They know that they made up the lore about, I don't know who the Roman gods are, Aphrodite, that might be Greek, I don't know. Whatever, Jupiter. They know they made the stuff up. They know that. And they suppress the truth. And they know it because it's evident within them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have clearly been seen, being understood through what has been made, so they are without excuse. There's an argument. What about the people that, the Bible is not there yet? You can know God and his divine nature and his invisible attributes without a Bible. You look at the universe and it is orderly. You look at the universe and it is designed. It is rhythmic and systematic. It is knowable. So there must be intent and reason. You can't know chaos. You can only be aware of chaos if there's order. So it's orderly. Just looking. Sun is in the sky every day for about the same amount of time. And actually, that time varies in a rhythmic pattern. And when that goes away, there's a moon. There's this other thing at the night. And that goes through phases. And those phases are predictable. And they seem to be in relation to each other. And one's hot and the other one's not. And you could just, there's bees, and the bees land on the flowers, and then the bees go over here, and then those flowers grow. And the more you look, this is what's crazy, is that's just surface level, just some observations. Water, how that's like the lifeblood of the earth. Everything's kind of in this perfect ecosystem, self-sustaining. But then you dive deeper. You get into like fractals and these patterns where you look at like a fern and it's like a mathematical fractal. Whoa. You start looking at molecules and hydrogen bonds and whoa, the laws of the universe. Where did those explode from? There's no anomalies. How is that possible? That nature took the right course at every turn, right? It's obvious. It was made. It was made. You could never walk into a house with a self-sustaining environment, auto temperature regulating, with everything you could ever need inside the house already. And it's got design, it's got feng shui, it's got aura. And you go in there and you ask another person, how did this house get here? Who built this? And they go, well, that's not very scientific, right? The house, it wasn't built. A Home Depot was struck by lightning and all the building blocks were there in that Home Depot, and it got struck, or there was some sort of reaction, something happened. We don't really know what happened, but there was basically a Home Depot and it exploded. And it took millions of years, but this house kind of just formed. You go, oh, you're retarded. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Your brain doesn't work. Right? And because that's stupid. And to call yourself a scientist, let's get into the next portion of the verse, because let's get down right here. Verse 22. No, verse 21. For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became what? Futile in their speculations, their theories. And their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise scientists, men of science, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man, and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. So Paul is calling this stuff out then. He has no idea what it's like now. But it hasn't changed. Man is still sinful man, and still will exchange the very obvious evidence of God and they'll call it whatever. You'll hear them, we're in a simulation. Yeah. Yes. That's another way to phrase it. It's another way to phrase it. And there's a programmer. Well, yeah. Yes. That's another way to phrase it. But just call him what he is. It is a simulation with a programmer. That programmer has some rules, and that programmer made a way for you to get out of the simulation into his land, into the real world, instead of just sticking you in a hard drive somewhere in darkness, instead of putting you in the trash bin. There's a way to escape the matrix. I mean, you just can't get more obvious than that. And then he continues about this choice, this exchange that happens. And people, a whole myriad of things, will always try to shift people's choice to sin and choice to live in sin, and they will warp it into some sort of thing where they can't help it, and it was nurture, not nature, and all sorts of hogwash. No, there's an exchange that happens. Now, when the exchange happens, when the choice to go into depravity and what is unnatural and unrighteous, when the choice is made, God doesn't put the brakes on. He goes, okay. See ya. Bye. And he explains that here. 20, verse 26. No, sorry, 25. For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie. They said, no. I am not going to believe that. I am going to believe this lie, and I'm going to propagate that. And they worshiped and served the creature rather than the creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, right? Because they chose not God. God gave them over to degrading passions. For their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way, men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. We know what that is. It's a choice to make. Everybody arrives at that choice. And we know that it is unnatural, or you get faced with that this is not right. Whatever it is. It's not just homosexuality. It's a myriad of things. Everybody gets faced with I can't keep going down this road, or I can keep going down this road, but I know it's wrong. Whether it's theft, lying, gossip, he gets into it at the very end of this. Being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. And although they know the ordinance of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but they give a hearty approval to those who also practice them. So it's all of those things. You eventually come to a crossroads where you go, I know that this is wrong. I'm going to just keep doing it. Or I know that this is wrong. I feel the pull to want to do that. But I know that it's wrong, and I know that God does not like these things. I'm going to turn toward God and away from the sin. But once you make the choice, no, I don't want God. I don't want what he has to offer. I want to live in sin. I'm going to keep going down this. I'm going to have pride in my sin instead of run toward God and develop that disgust for sin. Develop that allergy to sin. I'm instead going to run to sin and get an allergy to God. And he doesn't stop you. He doesn't stop you. He's like, okay, go. Bye. See you. Let's see how far. You're going to be shocked at how far you go. And maybe you won't. But he plunge you into depravity. And we see it. And there's been whole entire movements to try to justify all of these things. All of them. Whatever ism is now a mental condition. It's psychological, this, that, and the other thing. You name it. Violence is not violence in most instances. It's, fear or response to institutional oppression and racism or whatever. It's never what it actually is. Which is just people are born in sin, and some people just choose to go full bore into it, and some people don't. God calls some people out of that. We have to call it what it is. Otherwise, your view of the world is warped. And people don't need the gospel and God to reach in and snatch them out of sin and divinely intervene, they need better schools, better education, better upbringing, because people are good, they just don't have good information. Or people are good, they're just poor, or they have some need or some fear, and that's where all of this comes from. No. They need psychiatric help. They need therapy. No. People do need some things. They do need coaches and guidance and therapy and maybe some medicine and prayer and a meaning and purpose. And they do need all of these things. But some people have all of those things and still commit atrocities. Many people. In fact, all people would. It's not from being deprived of something. Oh, he didn't have a good childhood. Who has a perfect childhood? Nobody. And so one of the things I was watching this week, there are some famous people out there that are, they have this idea, and I don't know that it's fully fleshed out or not, but they make these statements, and they're not very accurate. And it is what it is. It's not accurate because it's they don't know any better, or maybe they just are not. The purpose is not to not flesh out this idea entirely. So it's just a passing statement. I don't really know. But I was watching Tucker Carlson, an interview. I don't remember who he was talking to. It might have been Dave Smith. It might have been. I think it was on Dave Smith's podcast. But he was talking to Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson was making this argument. I've seen him make it in other instances as well. I think when he was talking to Fuente, that people are not bad by their nature. They're not born in sin. It's just what he's saying. And I don't know if that's exactly what he's saying. Other people say exactly that, but it sounds kind of like, and I think I know what he's trying to get at, is that just a groups of people, just on the nature of being in that group, are not born. Like the group doesn't have sin, but human beings do. We're all born in sin. You don't have to teach a toddler to lie or disobey or rage and hit. You don't. They just do it. You can teach them. That's one of those inventors of evil that we were talking about in the first chapter. That is bad. Teach children to do bad things, and they'll get exposed to things as they get older. But it's innate. It's innate. You're going to do the wrong thing. It's just what happens. And Paul, which is his hero, he says, specifically says this in Romans. Again, I don't know that Tucker has any. I'm just a tiny channel. I'll probably never talk to him. He'll probably never see this. But other people hold varying degrees of this idea, where I think he's putting it into like a group category, and he's speaking to it typically in that context of like the group does not have sin because of the nature of the group. It's all made up of individuals, but all of those individuals are born in sin. All of us. That's what we're saved from. That's what Christ died for. That is the first Adam. Through him, all have sinned. And death came into the world through one, and then salvation came into the world through one, the second Adam, Jesus Christ. So Paul does get into it. I'm going to just read the excerpt here out of the end of chapter 3. What then? Are we better than they? No, not at all. For we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks are all under sin, as it is written. This is Old Testament quote here. And I believe this is out of Psalms. There is none righteous, not even one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become useless. There is none who does good. There is not even one. Their throat is an open grave. With their tongues they keep deceiving. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their paths, and the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. He's talking about all people, Jews and Greeks. By the very nature of them being human, this is the state that they're born in. They are dead in sins. We are all dead in sins, and God rescues us and brings us to life. And this is important to understand, again, because that only the gospel can save us from that. Only Christ can save us from that. It's not any of these other things that might help kind of curtail some of the sin that we experience or that we carry out. Yes, being more financially stable will keep you from robbing someone out of desperation, but it will not keep you from robbing someone out of greed. It will, being independent and self-reliant will keep you from murdering somebody out of desperation or out of pressure, but it won't keep you from murdering them out of anger. So, anyway, it's important to have these, and this is why Romans is so important, because it is the pillars. It is the pillars central to our faith. So the other portion of this is that nobody is any one thing. And that's what makes this kind of difficult, right? And I think, again, back to Tucker, I think that I don't know, people criticize him. I know Steven Crowder, some of these other guys I've seen, just while I'm working, I watch these videos. And I'll see like a Steven Crowder criticize somebody like Tucker and other individuals about, sorry, my wife's just blowing my phone up. I see like a Steven Crowder critique Tucker for making statements, and he just put out a video maybe a week ago or something about Tucker talking about Russia and also about Islam and like fearing God, and also I can't remember what the other one was. But anytime that I've seen Tucker, and again, I've never spoken to him. I'll probably never speak to him. He'll probably never see this channel at all. Tiny little channel. But anytime that I've listened to him, I don't listen to him a whole bunch. I'm not subscribed to the TCN network or anything like that, but I've listened to some of his stuff. And anytime I hear him talk about these things, my sense, and I hope that I'm doing justice to, or at least doing justice to what he's trying to get at. I think this is what he's trying to get at, is that nobody's one thing. These monoliths of evil and good, it's not real. It's not real. It is a facade, and it's to control you and me. Like when he's talking about Russia, we were imposing, like, this is during the Russia-Ukraine war. And yes, obviously that aggression and invasion and killing so many people is evil. It is evil. How did we get there? Well, that's kind of important, right? Because things are bad. But then as you start putting context to the bad, well, it's complicated. Humans operate in this very complicated environment. Our reality is complicated. That's why God gave us the brains that we have, to understand very complex situations. And the more information you have, the more that you kind of understand, well, yes, this is very complicated, right? The whole relationship with Ukraine and NATO and encroaching and the warnings and not letting Russia into NATO back in like the 90s or 80s, whatever it was. And so it's complicated, but we were taunting them and then they attacked and they're like, oh. Now, it's not right, but it didn't fall out of the sky. And we knew that there's some sort of tension there. And that's what Putin went and explained in his interview. This whole huge, long history. So there's an agenda, and we are not helping. So then what we do is we go and put sanctions on Russia. And I think what Tucker was exposing is that Russia's so bad, and we did these sanctions on them, and it's doing nothing. It's doing nothing. Their groceries are still relatively affordable in the capital. The country is like the United States. It's the size of a continent. It spans 2 continents. So it's not, you can't get to everywhere. And there's going to be some dirt poor regions just like there are in the United States. He went to their capital, I believe, or whatever. And what he was juxtaposing is, or one exposing is the sanctions. What are these sanctions doing? Are they actually impacting anything? No. Are they actually putting pressure on anything? No. So the United States is just posturing, not doing anything. And for a government that is so evil and corrupt, how come all their stuff is nicer than ours? How come their capital looks like a thriving, beautiful capital, and us, the good guys, the not corrupt ones, the ones that are doing everything right, the monolith of good, how come our subways and our cities and our capital looks awful and is full of crime? Full of crime, homeless, super expensive, nothing works. It's all gross and dangerous. How can something so corrupt and evil bring about beauty and conservation? And so I do remember him saying that the argument that that's only possible because he's a dictator is not an acceptable argument. It's not true. And we shouldn't accept that. So if a corrupt and evil country can have nice cities and subways and clean, then a good country should have it even better. I believe that's what his argument was, not sympathizing with him or anything like that. I believe when he makes these arguments and stuff, when he's talking about Islam and that it's good to fear God, he's not making a general statement that it's good to fear God and Islam is good because of that. He's making a general statement saying it's good to fear God. Whatever your God is, fear it. Have some reverence for your God. It's better than being godless and not fearing God. Fearing God is a good starting point. Because there's going to be some rules and you're going to adhere to them. There's going to be some order. Now, all of that order might not be good. And again, he's not explaining this, but if you've got some gray matter, white matter between your friggin' ears, I think you can grasp what he's saying. Everything is not one thing. Islam is not evil at every single turn. They have order. They respect each other to some extent. It's not great. It's not good. But it's not all bad. Russia, the government, is not great. It's not even good. But it's not all bad. It's not this monolith of evil that must be toppled at all. And again, They make it out to be Darth Vader, and we're going to launch a full offensive and we're standing in opposition of them. But then the thing you're doing does nothing. I can't remember what the other thing was. But yeah, there's not every, like David in the Old Testament, he is promised that he will become king. And he does. And when Saul dies, the whatever guy comes and tells David, and he's like, Saul's dead. King's dead. You are the king now. That's awesome. Celebrate. And David goes, cut this man down. And they chopped him up for celebrating that God's anointed king, even though God rejected him as king, he was still anointed by God to be king, was killed. Not to rejoice against the Lord's anointed. Had him killed right there on the spot. Now, is David the most horrible? Should we just throw out Psalms? That's a murder. David then went and had Uriah murdered. Had him abandoned on the front lines. Orders from the top. Send him out to the front. Have him die because he forced himself upon his wife, got her pregnant. I mean, you really can't get any more heinous than that. We just throw out the Psalms. He's a monolith of evil. No, he's not. People have arcs. They make horrible, terrible, evil mistakes. Sin, awful. Awful. And he paid for it dearly. He took a census when he wasn't supposed to. And an angel came down and just started killing everybody. Get rid of David. Monolith of evil. No. Everybody's not one thing. And they're not those things forever. Some people are awful for a few years, a decade, most of their life, and then they're not. Or they weren't at first, and then they are, and then they're not again. Or they start off bad, and then they go good, and then they go bad again, and then they go good. It's ebb and flow. People are not just one thing. And I think, and situations are not just one thing. They're complicated. And I think that's what Tucker is exposing most of the time, is that things are not just one thing. Things are things. They're complicated. People are complicated. They have deep love and passion for things and beauty and whatever and order, and they want to see a thriving society, and they're just like blinders on. Not everything that is good all of the time. You know, it's like to have some sort of like, and Tucker also does this too, these monolithic good ideas where it's like, you know, we shouldn't go to war ever for anything. That's like interventional, non-interventionist. Should not meddle in other countries' affairs. Everybody should have the freedom to do whatever. freedom of speech, freedom of whatever. Everybody acts like freedom of speech. That's another point that Steven Crowder was talking about, where it's like, oh, they don't have any freedom of speech over there. Dude, people don't have freedom of speech. That's just part and parcel with having somebody rule over you. You don't get freedom of speech, period. You might for a minute, but that's not the norm. Well, that's what America was founded on. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. The second there was newspapers, the second people had printing presses and could actually get word out there to massive amounts of people, they were controlled. They were infiltrated and controlled, and there was not true freedom of speech. There was always a narrative being pushed, and anybody that went against it, the freedom of choice, it's not real. The ruling class, the ruling party will always impose its will on whoever they can, period. The Civil War, a state should have the right to secede. No, they were forced to comply. They said, you know what? Our economy is it needs slavery to survive. Our economy is going to be destroyed if you do this. And who the heck are you to tell us to not have slaves? You had yours last week. And now all of a sudden everybody's got to drop theirs? Our economy depends on it. What are we supposed to do? You're not giving us an ultimatum. There's no like, or you going to come down here and work the fields? No, what you're going to do is you're going to come down here, kill 100,000 of us working, you're going to kill the workforce. And then what? And then we're really going to be in shambles over this. So just instead of killing all of us and destroying our economy, or making us give up all of our slave labor and killing our economy, we're just going to secede. You guys do your thing, we'll do our thing, and we'll figure it out later. Nope, we went down there and killed them. Hundreds of thousands of them. I'm union all the way, baby. Believe me. I'm glad they did it. I wouldn't exist. I'm glad they did it. But that was forced compliance by law when they wanted to secede. We should go for peace at every turn. Always go for peace. Tucker says that. They were property. And then the government said, no, they're not yours anymore. You have to let them go. And if you don't, we're going to come down there and shoot you until you comply. The government could do that with anything. They could tell you that your children, their age of consent now is 5. So you have to let them do whatever they want when they're 5. And if you don't, we're going to come and shoot you until you comply. They could do that with anything. Now, it just so happened that they did it for a pretty darn good reason. And that's where the complexity comes in. Everything is not just one thing. Yeah, it was awful that they went down there and just marched onto people's property and blasted them into compliance. And then we're like, why are you being racist? Oh, I don't know. My dad's family business is ruined and he's dead because of that guy. That's not the case, but that's what they think. Things are complicated. Things are complicated. Even the right thing is complicated. It's not all just one thing. If you don't have nuance and you can't use your brain to understand complex ideas and go, yeah, this thing that this person is doing or that this group of individuals are doing is really awful. And over here, they're doing some really good things, actually. And I wonder what it is that makes them do this really good over here and this really bad over here. And if there's a way to kind of change their focus or to reorient them and understand what that thing is and try to draw them to that or whatever, and get a more peaceable approach to things. There is a way. Could be. Some people are just steeped in evil and there's nothing you can do about that, but not everybody's just one thing. There's also, back to that imputation of sin, where it's just no group of people are guilty or there's no genetic inheritance of sin. Historically not the case either. Now, it's not always the case, but there are instances where that is the case. We're not the ones that go and make that call, at least in the Bible, but it is in the Bible. So I might as well cover it because it also has to do kind of with this topic of being born in sin or inheriting the sins of your father. That is a thing. It is a thing. Even though Tucker says it's not a thing, it is a thing. We as Christians don't have the authority to go and exact that justice for that, though, right? There's stories of like the Amalekites, right? They get wiped out because a generation or two back, their ancestors attacked, unprovoked, I think maybe surprise attack, ambushed a group of Israelites. And they never repented for it. God promised them, I'm going to visit judgment on you, and you repent. And they didn't. And generation went by, and they never did. And then finally he said, okay, now you have a king. Perfect. He's going to go and exact this judgment on you. And he's going to use it as his learning opportunity for everybody to kind of understand, right? God reveals himself through how he interacts with mankind, and he interacts with the Jews in particular in the Old Testament. It says, send Saul in there, kill everybody. Everybody. Men, women, children, animals, everything. They're king, everybody. Kill them all. I warned them. I told them to repent. They didn't. I told them that this was coming. They didn't. They don't fear me. And this sin just keeps getting worse. They're just escalating and escalating and escalating. Wipe them all out. All of them. They didn't do the thing. They didn't ambush them. All guilty. Sodom and Gomorrah. We'll go back even further. Every single person? I don't think it's possible. But it was, right? Abraham stands with God looking down at the city. He's like, if I can get 10 righteous? Okay. If I get 5. You can find 5. But I'm wiping the whole city off of the map. I'm wiping the whole place. Everybody dies. Men, women, children, animals, all of it. All of it. So to say that is not the case is just plainly not true. We do inherit the sins of our father, Adam. But also God can visit punishment. He says it. I will visit punishment on your children's children. I believe to Ahab. Ahab, I believe, we'll read it later. Once we get to that book, Kings or whatever it was. I believe he repents at the end of his life. God still visits his sin on his children's children. So it happens. God has the authority to do that, not us. So again, it's not just one thing. It's complex, but that's just not the case. Some things are inherited. Some guilt is inherited. Some instances, sometimes. It's not super normal to happen. It wasn't like every single kid inherited the sins of his father, no, there are instances where it does happen, though. Again, Christians, we don't exact that justice out on people. God does that. And he does as he pleases because he's the God of the universe. So again, like even today, we come up against some of these things that we find in Romans, where, again, you got people like Tucker who will try to paint this picture of things not being just one thing. This is not just evil. There's also good. And if we are just good, how come we don't have some of the good things that they have? If we're just pure good and everything amazing and the moral high horse and all that stuff, how come there's crime and ugliness and poverty and things don't work? It's gross. And they're evil, everything bad, but there's beauty and historical sites are preserved and it's clean. We should have that to more, right? And then also people like him and some others would say, no, there's no, you're good. You're not sinful by your very birth or nature. You are. Your group may not be. And just the group in and of itself, it does not inherit sin, but it could. Where he is correct, we as Christians, we don't dole out that judgment. Things are complicated. And I think it's very disingenuous for folks on the right and the left. Again, I'm not picking on Crowder or anything like that. He's just the last guy that I watched do it, so it's fresh in my mind. But things are complicated. And it's okay to point those things out. And it's mature to have conversations like that. Again, we have examples like that in our own faith. Paul being one of them. Murdered Christians, then wrote the most of the New Testament. Matthew was a tax collector, which it just by the very nature implies that he was stealing. Most of them did. Stealing, taking a little for himself, skimming off the top, extorting, and then writes the Gospel of Matthew. Becomes a close disciple of Jesus. Solomon, wise, praised for wisdom, is so wise and rich and all this thing. Has 1,000 wives. Brings a ton of paganism into Israel. Finishes his life going, this was dumb. All life is stupid. It's all vain and vapid and void. What is it all? We're not all just one thing. But it is important to have that bedrock that the only thing that can save us from the evil is the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is it. It's not education. It's not raising the poverty line. It's not raising people out of poverty, rather. It's not better infrastructure. It's not therapy. It's Christ. And that's it. you can understand that, you can kind of parse the world out a little bit better and realize everything else are symptoms. Everything else is symptom chasing, not cause chasing. So anyway, I don't know. That kind of gets us through. There's a whole other. We got faith to get into, and I think that man, do we do an entirely separate one on just the faith and justification? I think we got to save that for next time. So I think six kind of gets into it a little bit. So I think we're going to save the whole faith works conversation for the next one. So that's a little teaser for you. Follow along with Storytime with Uncle Charlie. Get in the Word daily. We're doing it 5 or 6 times a week, 1 chapter a day. Follow along so that we are all on the same page about stuff. Again, that is just a real basic reading. We're not getting into the nitty-gritty of everything. We're just kind of getting a nice foundation. Like, this is what the point of the text was. This is what it's trying to elicit. Couple of high points and move on. Nothing super deep, real basic. It's just a foundational kind of reading and the consistency of it. And then here, when we're hanging out, now we're getting into some nitty gritties. Now we're getting into some real world applications, and we're getting into like a lot more of that kind of stuff. So follow along, and I will see you next time.